My sister hated her daughter and called her a mistake. When I confronted her, she screamed and revealed a horrifying secret about the father. The first time I heard my sister Melissa call her 4-year-old daughter Lily a mistake, I thought I'd misunderstood. We were at a family barbecue at our parents' house in Austin, and Lily had accidentally knocked over her juice cup while reaching for a cookie. It was the kind of minor spill that happens dozens of times at any gathering with small children, but Melissa's reaction was disproportionately harsh. "God, Lily, you're such a mistake," she snapped, grabbing paper towels to clean up the sticky mess. "Can't you do anything right?" Lily's face crumpled at her mother's words, and she began crying in the way that only very young children cry, with her whole body, as if the world had just ended. Instead of comforting her daughter, Melissa rolled her eyes and walked away, leaving Lily sobbing by herself while the rest of the family pretended not to notice the cruel exchange. "Come here, sweetheart," I said, kneeling down to hug Lily and help her clean up the spill. "It's okay. Accidents happen. Aunt Katie will get you a new juice." Lily clung to me with the desperate intensity of a child who wasn't used to receiving comfort from adults, and I felt a familiar knot of concern forming in my stomach. This wasn't the first time I'd witnessed Melissa's harsh treatment of her daughter, but calling a 4-year-old a mistake seemed to cross a line that even Melissa shouldn't have been willing to cross. Melissa had always been the more volatile of the two Walker sisters. 3 years older than me, she'd struggled with anger management and impulse control since we were children, but becoming a mother at 22 had seemed to amplify her worst traits rather than tempering them with maternal instincts. "She's just stressed," our mother would say whenever I expressed concern about Melissa's parenting style. "Single motherhood is hard, and Lily can be a difficult child. Melissa is doing the best she can under challenging circumstances." But what I was witnessing didn't look like stress-induced impatience. It looked like genuine resentment and dislike directed at a small child who had no way to defend herself or understand why her mother seemed to find her presence so irritating. "Where's Lily's father?" I'd asked Melissa when Lily was born, though she'd been evasive about the details of her pregnancy and the circumstances surrounding Lily's conception. "Not in the picture," she'd replied curtly. "And that's all you need to know about it." In the 4 years since Lily's birth, Melissa had never provided any additional information about her daughter's paternity, and our family had learned to avoid the subject entirely. All we knew was that Melissa had been living in San Antonio for about a year before Lily was born, working various retail jobs and apparently dating someone who was no longer part of their lives. "It doesn't matter who her father is," Melissa would say if anyone pressed for details. "He's gone, and it's better that way. Lily and I are fine on our own." But they didn't seem fine. Melissa treated Lily with a coldness that was painful to witness, rarely showing affection or patience, and frequently expressing frustration about the burden of single parenthood in ways that made it clear she viewed her daughter as an obstacle to the life she wanted to live. "I could have gone to college if I hadn't gotten pregnant," she'd complain during family gatherings. "I could have had a real career, traveled, dated decent men. Instead, I'm stuck working dead-end jobs and dealing with a kid who never stops demanding attention." "Lily's a beautiful, sweet child," I'd reply, trying to advocate for my niece without directly criticizing my sister's attitude. "She's lucky to have you as a mother." "Lucky?" Melissa would laugh bitterly. "She's the reason my life is ruined. If I hadn't made that one stupid mistake, I'd be living a completely different life right now." The word mistake appeared frequently in Melissa's descriptions of her daughter and her circumstances, but I'd assumed she was referring to the situation rather than the child herself. Hearing her use that word directly to Lily's face was a wake-up call about how deep her resentment actually ran. Over the next few months, I started paying closer attention to the interactions between Melissa and Lily during family visits. What I observed was a pattern of emotional neglect and psychological cruelty that seemed designed to make a small child feel unwanted and unloved. Melissa would ignore Lily's attempts to get her attention, respond to questions with irritation or sarcasm, and frequently make comments about how much easier her life would be without the responsibility of parenthood. She'd compare Lily unfavorably to other children, criticize her appearance and behavior in front of relatives, and seemed genuinely annoyed by normal childhood activities like playing, laughing, or asking for help. "Why can't you be quiet like your cousin Emma?" she'd say when Lily was being normally active for a 4-year-old. Some children know how to behave appropriately in public. Stop being so needy, she'd snap when Lily asked for help reaching something or wanted her mother to watch her draw a picture. I'm not your entertainment committee. You're giving me a headache, was her standard response to Lily's attempts at conversation, and, you're too much work, was how she'd explain her reluctance to engage in typical parent-child activities like reading bedtime stories or playing games. The psychological impact on Lily was becoming increasingly obvious. She was an anxious child who seemed constantly worried about disappointing her mother, apologizing frequently for normal behavior, and seeking approval and affection from any adult who showed her kindness. She'd developed a stutter that appeared when she was nervous, which seemed to be most of the time when Melissa was around. I'm sorry, Mommy, became Lily's default response to almost everything, even when she hadn't done anything wrong. She'd apologize for being hungry, for needing to use the bathroom, for asking questions, for existing in ways that seemed to inconvenience her mother. She's turning into a little victim, Melissa complained to our parents. Always apologizing and acting like everything is her fault. I don't know where she gets that from. But I knew exactly where Lily was getting that behavior. From living with a mother who treated her like a burden and made her feel responsible for every negative emotion or inconvenience in their shared life. The breaking point came during Lily's 5th birthday party, which our parents had offered to host at their house since Melissa seemed reluctant to plan any kind of celebration for her daughter. It should have been a happy occasion, but Melissa's mood grew increasingly dark as the afternoon progressed and attention focused on Lily. Everyone's making such a big deal about this, Melissa muttered as relatives fussed over Lily and took pictures of her opening presents. It's just another year of her being alive. Not exactly an achievement worth celebrating. Melissa, she's your daughter, I said quietly, trying to keep the conversation private. Her birthday should be special to you, even if you're not feeling festive. Should be special? Melissa laughed harshly. Katie, you have no idea what you're talking about. You don't have kids. You don't understand what it's like to have your entire life destroyed by one person's existence. Destroyed is a strong word. Lily is a sweet, beautiful child who loves you completely. How can loving someone destroy your life? Because she shouldn't exist. Melissa hissed, her voice loud enough that several relatives turned to look at us with concern. She was never supposed to happen, and every day I look at her, I'm reminded of the worst thing that ever happened to me. The venom in her voice was shocking, even coming from someone I'd already recognized as a problematic parent. But what disturbed me more was the implication behind her words. That Lily's existence was connected to some traumatic event that Melissa had never discussed with our family. What do you mean she was never supposed to happen? I asked, though I was starting to suspect that I didn't want to know the answer. I mean exactly what I said, Melissa replied, her voice getting louder and more agitated. Lily is living proof of the worst night of my life, and you people keep expecting me to celebrate her like she's some kind of gift instead of a constant reminder of something I can't forget. By this point, our parents and several other relatives were listening to our conversation, and I could see confusion and concern on their faces as they tried to understand what Melissa was talking about. Melissa, what happened? Our mother asked, moving closer to where we were standing. What are you talking about? What worst night? The night I was raped, Melissa screamed, her voice echoing across the backyard and silencing every conversation at the party. The night some stranger forced himself on me and got me pregnant with her. That's what I'm talking about. That's the secret everyone keeps asking me to explain. The silence that followed her revelation was deafening. Lily, who had been playing with her new toys nearby, looked up at the sound of her mother's raised voice with the expression of a child who was used to being the cause of adult anger but didn't understand why. Mommy? Lily said quietly, her voice small and uncertain. Are you mad at me? Yes, Melissa shouted, turning to face her daughter with years of suppressed rage and trauma pouring out all at once. Yes, I'm mad at you. I'm mad that you exist. I'm mad that every time I look at you, I see his face. I'm mad that you ruined my life before you were even born. The aftermath of Melissa's outburst was chaos and heartbreak in equal measure. Lily began crying hysterically, not understanding what her mother was saying but recognizing the hatred and rejection in her voice. Our parents rushed to comfort their granddaughter while I stood frozen, trying to process the revelation that my niece was the product of rape and that my sister had been carrying this trauma alone for over 5 years. "Melissa," our father said, his voice shaking with emotion as he picked up Lily and tried to shield her from her mother's rage. "We need to talk about this. But not here, not in front of Lily." "Why not in front of her?" Melissa demanded, her composure completely shattered. "She's the reason I can't move on from what happened to me. She's the constant reminder that I can never forget the worst thing that ever happened to me." "She's an innocent child," our mother said firmly, though tears were streaming down her face. "Whatever happened to you, it's not her fault. She didn't choose to be born. And I didn't choose to be raped." Melissa screamed. "I didn't choose to get pregnant from it. I didn't choose to spend every day for the past 5 years looking at a face that reminds me of the animal who attacked me." The conversation was spiraling out of control, with Lily sobbing in our father's arms and Melissa completely unraveling in front of the extended family who had gathered to celebrate a little girl's birthday. I realized that someone needed to take charge of the situation before even more damage was done. "Mom, take Lily inside," I said, trying to keep my voice calm and authoritative. "Dad, call Dr. Peterson and see if he can see Melissa today. Everyone else needs to leave right now." "I don't need a doctor," Melissa said, though her voice was beginning to crack with exhaustion and the emotional toll of finally revealing her secret. "I need everyone to stop pretending that Lily is some kind of blessing when she's actually a curse that I can't escape from." "Melissa, you're traumatized and you need help," I said gently, moving closer to my sister but being careful not to touch her. "What happened to you was horrible, and you've been dealing with it alone for too long. But Lily isn't your enemy. She's a victim of the same crime that hurt you." "She's not a victim," Melissa said bitterly. "She's evidence. Every day she grows up looking more like him, acting like him, reminding me that he won. That he got what he wanted from me and left me with a permanent consequence that I can't undo." The pain in my sister's voice was heartbreaking, but so was the damage she was inflicting on an innocent child who had no understanding of the circumstances surrounding her conception. Lily needed protection from her mother's trauma, and Melissa needed professional help to process what had happened to her and learn to separate her daughter from her attacker. "How long have you felt this way about Lily?" I asked carefully. "Since the moment I found out I was pregnant," Melissa admitted. "I wanted to have an abortion, but I was too far along when I realized what had happened. By the time I understood that the rape had resulted in pregnancy, it was too late to terminate." "Why didn't you tell us any of this when Lily was born? Why didn't you ask for help?" "Because I was ashamed," she said, her voice getting quieter as the adrenaline from her outburst began to fade. "Because I was afraid you'd all look at her differently if you knew how she was conceived. Because I hoped that maybe I could learn to love her despite everything." "And you couldn't?" "I've tried for 5 years to see her as my daughter instead of his," Melissa said, tears finally beginning to flow. "But she has his eyes, his hair color, his smile. She even has some of his mannerisms that I recognize from that night. How am I supposed to love someone who looks like the person who destroyed my life?" The conversation was revealing the depth of trauma that Melissa had been carrying alone since before Lily was born. She'd been trying to parent a child who served as a constant trigger for her PTSD, with no support system and no professional help to process what had happened to her. "Melissa, you should have told us," our mother said, returning from the house after settling Lily in front of the television with snacks and cartoons. "We could have helped you. We could have found resources, therapy, support groups. You didn't have to handle this alone." "I didn't want Lily to grow up knowing she was a rape baby," Melissa replied. "I thought maybe if I kept the secret, she could have a normal childhood without that shadow hanging over her. But instead, she's growing up feeling hated and unwanted by her own mother," I pointed out gently. "Your trauma is valid and you deserve support, but Lily doesn't deserve to be punished for something that isn't her fault." "I know that intellectually," Melissa said. "But emotionally, I can't separate her from what happened to me. Every time she needs something from me, every time she wants affection or attention, I feel like he's taking something from me all over again." The conversation continued for another hour as we tried to convince Melissa to seek immediate professional help and to consider temporary alternative care arrangements for Lily while she worked through her trauma. It was clear that the current situation was damaging both mother and daughter in ways that could have lasting psychological consequences. I think Lily should stay with us for a while, our father suggested. Just until Melissa can get some counseling and figure out how to move forward in a healthier way. I'm not giving up my daughter, Melissa said defensively, though her heart didn't seem to be in the protest. You're not giving her up, our mother clarified. You're getting help so that you can be the mother she needs you to be. Right now, you're both suffering, and that's not sustainable. Dr. Peterson, our family physician, arrived that evening and spent 2 hours talking with Melissa about her trauma, her relationship with Lily, and the resources available to help her process what had happened to her. He recommended immediate counseling with a specialist in sexual assault trauma, medication to help with what appeared to be severe PTSD, and temporary respite care for Lily while Melissa worked on her mental health. This is a complex situation that requires professional intervention, he explained to our family. Melissa has been dealing with untreated trauma for over 5 years, and that trauma has affected every aspect of her relationship with her daughter. Recovery is possible, but it's going to take time and intensive therapy. What about Lily? I asked. She's been exposed to emotional abuse and rejection for her entire life. What kind of help does she need? Lily will need her own counseling to address the psychological damage from living with a mother who couldn't bond with her properly, Dr. Peterson said. Children who grow up feeling unwanted often develop attachment disorders and self-esteem issues that can affect them for life if not addressed early. That night, Lily slept in our parents' guest room while Melissa went home alone for the first time since her daughter's birth. The house felt strangely quiet without the constant tension that had characterized their relationship, and Lily seemed more relaxed and talkative than I'd seen her in months. Aunt Katie, she said as I tucked her into bed, why was Mommy so mad at me today? Your mommy wasn't really mad at you, sweetheart, I said carefully, trying to find age-appropriate words to explain an impossible situation. Sometimes adults have big feelings about things that happened before you were born, and those feelings can make them act in ways that hurt people they love. Did I do something bad? No, Lily. You didn't do anything bad. You're a wonderful little girl, and none of this is your fault. Then why doesn't Mommy like me? The question broke my heart because it was so straightforward and so impossible to answer honestly. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her mother's inability to love her stems from trauma associated with her conception? How do you help a child understand that she's been rejected not because of who she is, but because of what she represents to someone who's never processed their own victimization? Your mommy does love you, I said, though the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. She just needs some help learning how to show that love in better ways. Will she get help? Yes, she will. And while she's getting help, you get to stay here with Grandma and Grandpa and me. We're going to take very good care of you. Over the next few months, Melissa began intensive therapy with a specialist in sexual assault trauma while Lily remained in our parents' care and started her own counseling sessions with a child psychologist. The separation was difficult but necessary, allowing both mother and daughter to begin healing from the psychological damage that had affected their relationship since birth. I'm starting to understand that my feelings about Lily aren't really about her, Melissa told me during one of our weekly phone conversations. They're about what happened to me and my inability to process that trauma in healthy ways. How is the therapy going? It's hard, really hard. I'm having to relive the worst night of my life over and over again, but this time with someone who's helping me understand that the rape wasn't my fault and that Lily isn't responsible for what her biological father did to me. That's progress. It is, but it's also painful to realize how much damage I've done to her over the past 5 years. She's been paying the price for my trauma, and that's not fair to her. The important thing is that you're both getting help now, I said. It's not too late to repair your relationship with her. I hope so. I want to learn to love her the way she deserves to be loved. I want to see her as my daughter instead of as a reminder of what happened to me. Lily's progress was equally encouraging. Away from the constant rejection and criticism she'd experienced with Melissa, she began to flourish under our parents' patient, loving care. Her stutter disappeared, her anxiety decreased, and she started displaying the normal confidence and curiosity of a healthy 5-year-old. I think Lily's starting to understand that she's valuable and loved for who she is, her therapist, Dr. Sarah Kim, told us during one of our family sessions. She's beginning to develop the secure attachment that she should have formed with her mother during her early years. Will she be able to have a healthy relationship with Melissa eventually? That depends on Melissa's progress in therapy and her ability to separate her daughter from her trauma, Dr. Kim explained. If Melissa can learn to see Lily as an individual rather than as a symbol of her assault, then yes, they can potentially rebuild their relationship. And if she can't, then we'll need to consider permanent alternative arrangements that prioritize Lily's emotional and psychological well-being. A year later, Melissa was ready to begin supervised visits with Lily, working with a family therapist to rebuild their relationship in a controlled environment. The process was slow and often difficult, but gradually, Melissa began to see her daughter as a separate person rather than as an extension of her trauma. She's actually funny, Melissa told me after one of their supervised visits. I never noticed before because I was so focused on seeing him in her. But she has her own personality, her own sense of humor, her own way of looking at the world. She's always been funny. You just weren't able to see it before. I know. And I hate that I missed so much of who she really is because I was stuck in my own pain. Today, 3 years after that birthday party revelation, Melissa and Lily are slowly rebuilding their relationship with ongoing therapeutic support. Melissa has learned coping strategies for managing her PTSD triggers, and Lily has developed the resilience and self-worth that come from knowing she's unconditionally loved by the adults in her life. They don't live together yet. Lily remains with our parents while Melissa continues her recovery, but they spend increasing amounts of time together, and their interactions are characterized by genuine affection rather than the resentment and rejection that defined their early relationship. I can't undo the damage I caused her during those first 5 years, Melissa told me recently. But I can make sure that the rest of her childhood is filled with the love and acceptance she should have had from the beginning. That's all any of us can do. Try to be better than we were yesterday. The secret that Melissa had carried for over 5 years, that Lily was conceived through rape, explained everything about their dysfunctional relationship, but it also provided a pathway to healing. Once the truth was acknowledged and proper support was provided, both mother and daughter could begin the long process of recovery. Some secrets are too heavy to carry alone, and some trauma is too complex to overcome without professional help. But with the right support and enough time, even the most damaged relationships can sometimes be repaired, and even the most unwanted children can learn that they deserve love simply for being who they are.